The box is real, the papers are real, the warranty card scans, the serial number checks out, and this Rolex on a dealer's counter is completely fake. Authentication rejections surged 6% last year across major resale platforms, not because dealers got careless, but because the fakes got that good. Chinese factories produce 40 million counterfeit watches a year, 10 million more than the entire Swiss industry. Rolex has shuttered hundreds of stores. Secondary prices have collapsed over 30%. The question is no longer whether fakes have infiltrated the market. The question is whether the market can survive what comes next. Quarterly intake logs from major resale platforms tell a story that's hard to ignore. In the most recent reporting period, a 6% year-over-year spike in failed Rolex authentications hit the books. Not a blip, an institutional red flag. Marketplace analysts flagged the anomaly in a confidential audit. More than 1 in every 16 Rolexes submitted for resale failed to clear verification. The rejection surge did not come from rookie mistakes or sloppy paperwork. It came from watches that on the surface passed every known test, serial numbers, warranty cards, NFC chips, even the feel of the metal. Beneath the loop, the deception ran deeper. The audit excerpt paints a stark picture. Intake teams, seasoned by years of routine screening, suddenly found themselves pausing over details that once felt automatic. The spike was not limited to one city or platform. It cut across continents: New York, London, Hong Kong, Dubai. The 6% figure is not just a statistic. It represents thousands of watches, millions of dollars in blocked sales, and a mounting backlog of disputed inventory. Platform logs show that the average time to resolve a flagged Rolex case doubled over the quarter as authenticators scrambled to trace the origin of each failed piece. Dealers, too, felt the pressure. Intake rejection rates that hovered at 2 or 3% in previous years now edge toward double digits in certain hotspots. The cost of a single false negative, a fake slipping through, could mean a 6-figure loss and a ruined reputation. But the cost of a false positive, rejecting a genuine watch, meant alienating trusted sellers and shrinking inventory in a market already starved for supply. The audit's conclusion is clear: the problem is systemic, not anecdotal. The counterfeiters have breached the perimeter. The 6% spike is only the measurable surface. What lies beneath is a volume and sophistication that cannot be dismissed as background noise. The next question is, how big is the iceberg? The answer starts with raw numbers, production volumes that dwarf anything the Swiss industry can muster. Customs seizure logs and industry reports converge on a number that dwarfs even the most pessimistic forecasts. Each year, an estimated 40 million counterfeit watches enter global circulation. That's not a rounding error, it's a tidal wave. For every 3 genuine Swiss watches produced, nearly 4 fakes slip through borders, online storefronts, and street markets. The Swiss watch industry, with all its centuries-old factories and legendary brands, manages to turn out around 30 million authentic pieces annually. Yet somewhere beyond the reach of Geneva's strict controls, the shadow market outproduces the real one. Rolex sits at the center of this maelstrom. Analysts tracking brand-specific seizures and resale listings peg the annual number of fake Rolexes at 20 million. Half of all counterfeit watches, by volume and by value, bear the Coronet logo. That means for every genuine Rolex leaving the factory floor, roughly 1 million a year, 20 counterfeits are waiting in the wings. The math is relentless. Even the most conservative customs estimates, based on a 2 to 3% seizure rate, support the 40 million figure. The real number may be higher, hidden in the cracks of e-commerce, private resales, and unregulated shipments. The implications ripple out far beyond collectors and dealers. A global market flooded with more counterfeit watches than authentic ones turns every transaction into a gamble. The sheer scale distorts everything: price discovery, consumer trust, even the perceived value of luxury itself. If a watch can be copied in such numbers, down to the box, the papers, the digital warranty, what does authentic ownership mean? Industry insiders warn that the line between real and fake grows thinner by the day. The counterfeiters are not just copying watches, they are manufacturing an entire ecosystem of trust, and they are doing it at industrial scale. With 40 million fakes in circulation, the question is no longer whether the market is compromised, but how deep the compromise goes. Who is making these watches, and how did the counterfeit supply chain grow so vast, so fast? The hunt for the origin begins. Customs data draws a hard line on the map. Of every 100 counterfeit watches seized worldwide, more than half, 53%, originate from China. Not a vague estimate, but a number stamped on official seizure logs and industry reports. The concentration is staggering. One country, one vast industrial engine producing the majority of the world's fake luxury timepieces. This is not a case of scattered backyard workshops or small-time forgers. We are looking at a network of factories, many clustered in Guangdong and Zhejiang provinces, operating with the scale and precision of legitimate manufacturers. The sheer density of production means that a single policy change, a customs raid, or a lull in enforcement can ripple across the entire global market in weeks. The 53% figure is not just a statistic, it is a structural risk. It means that the global supply of counterfeit Rolexes, Omegas, and Pateks is not dispersed, but centralized. Customs officers, tasked with intercepting illicit shipments, report that the vast majority of seized watches, boxes, warranty cards, even packaging, trace back to the same handful of Chinese export hubs. The logistical backbone is robust. Watches shipped by air and sea, and increasingly through e-commerce channels, are wrapped in layers of fake provenance and digital paperwork. This geographic concentration gives counterfeiters leverage. When Chinese export volumes swell, the world's luxury markets flood in tandem. When enforcement tightens, supply contracts, but only temporarily. The risk is not just to brands or collectors, but to the entire pricing mechanism of the secondary market. If over half of all seized fakes come from a single source, what happens when that source upgrades its methods or shifts its focus? The answer is not just about numbers, it is about the next level of deception, hidden in plain sight, waiting in the shadows of the supply chain. Factories in Guangdong and Zhejiang have rewritten the rules of the counterfeit game. The old street market knockoffs, lightweight, cheap, obvious, are now just the bottom rung of a three-tier system. At the entry level, so-called tourist fakes trade for $50 to $300. They are built from low-grade brass or steel, plastic crystals, and stamped with sloppy engravings. Anyone with a basic loupe can spot them. But these are just noise, background static in a market that has moved on. The middle tier, labeled AAA replicas, sells for $300 to $1,000. These watches use Japanese or Chinese ETA-style movements, stainless steel cases, and better finishing. They fool casual buyers and sometimes even slip past inattentive dealers. Still, a trained eye can catch them if there is time to look closely. Then there is the top tier, super fakes. Price tags start at $500 and climb past $5,000, with the average sale landing between $1,200 and $2,500. These are not back alley specials. Super fakes use 904L stainless steel, the same alloy Rolex reserves for its own cases. Sapphire crystals, cloned 3135 and 3235 movements, laser-etched crowns, NFC-enabled warranty cards. Material analysis of seized pieces shows a 92% match to genuine Rolex metallurgy. Weight, feel, even the sound of the rotor, all engineered to defeat classic detection methods. Marketplace data from June 2024 exposes the scale. 15,000 fake Rolexes are listed on Chinese e-commerce sites each month, a 22% quarterly spike. The numbers are climbing, and so is the quality. Each new wave of super fakes erases another line between real and counterfeit. The old tricks, checking heft, scanning for surface flaws, are failing. The industry's own tests are falling behind. If a $5,000 super fake can fool experts and pass digital verification, what happens to trust, to value, to price? The next chapter reveals why even the most advanced authentication protocols are now under siege. Weight used to be the first line of defense. A genuine Rolex Submariner lands at 150 grams, give or take. Super fakes now match that number within a single gram, even in side-by-side weigh-ins. The Cyclops lens, once a dead giveaway, now magnifies the date window at a near-perfect 2.5 times. No distortion, no telltale blur. Under a loupe, the coronet at 6 o'clock, Rolex's microscopic crown, shows a pattern of dots and variable etching depth. But counterfeiters have mastered the laser, replicating the coronet so precisely that only a macro comparison with a genuine piece can expose the difference. Even seasoned watchmakers admit that in the hand, these super fakes feel right. They look right. The old tricks, heft, cyclops, coronet, have become obsolete. With surface cues neutralized, authenticators are forced deeper, cracking open casebacks and probing movements. If the outside is perfect, how many fakes are already hiding in plain sight? Inside the caseback, the last line of defense comes down to the movement. Independent watchmakers armed with decades of horological manuals and a trained eye zero in on the free-sprung balance, a hallmark of genuine Rolex engineering. Authentic Rolex calibers, like 3135 and 3235, use a balance wheel adjusted by tiny weight screws, with no visible regulator arm. Most clones, even the best, still rely on a traditional regulator, a telltale lever that swings on a fixed axle. Under magnification, that single detail separates a $10,000 watch from a $500 imposter. But even here, the margin for error is shrinking. Some superfake movements now mimic the blue parachrom hairspring and engrave faux serials deep into the bridge. Yet the tactile feel remains hard to fake. When a genuine crown winds, it is nearly silent, smooth, almost frictionless. Clones often betray themselves with a gritty, sand-like resistance and a faint, uneven rotor wobble. Experienced watchmakers listen for these cues, sometimes with nothing but a stethoscope pressed to the case. Every year, as movement cloning advances, another layer of trust is stripped away. If even the inside can be forged, what is left to defend? The next wave of counterfeiters is not just copying the watch, they are replicating the entire ecosystem of trust. The question is no longer whether you can spot a fake, but whether authenticity itself can survive the onslaught. Authentication protocols are under siege from a new breed of counterfeiters who do not just copy the watch, they clone the entire trust ecosystem. NFC-enabled warranty cards, once considered foolproof, are now being duplicated with chilling accuracy. Counterfeiters extract the data from genuine Rolex chips, then burn it onto blank NFC cards. The result is a fake card that passes a tap and scan test, logs a valid serial number, and even tricks resale platforms' intake software. Audit trails that should confirm authenticity are now just as vulnerable as the watches themselves. But the threat goes deeper than digital forgeries. Enter the Frankenwatch, a hybrid built from a mix of genuine and counterfeit parts. Dealers report cases where a real Rolex dial and hands are paired with a clone movement, or a genuine movement is hidden inside a replica case. These hybrids slip past surface checks and even movement inspections, especially when serial numbers and engravings are swapped or re-engraved. The only way to catch them is a full teardown, a costly, time-consuming process that most platforms cannot afford for every intake. When the trust chain is cloned and when Frankenwatches hide in plain sight, the very concept of authenticity begins to unravel. If every checkpoint, physical, digital, even mechanical, can be spoofed, what is left to believe in? The next chapter exposes the fallout when trust is no longer guaranteed. Rolex resale prices have plummeted more than 30% from their 2022 highs. Chrono 24 and watch charts show the collapse in real time. Index graphs that once pointed skyward now trace a sharp downward arc. Flagship models that commanded a 35% premium over retail just 2 years ago are now trading at or below list price. The average listing sits longer, waiting for a buyer, as confidence drains from the market. Liquidity is drying up. Total Rolex listings on Chrono 24 dropped 9% between mid-2022 and late 2024, with unique sellers down 12%. Dealers and collectors face a market where every sale is a question mark and every price is suspect. The signal that once defined value, a genuine Rolex commanding a premium, has been drowned out by a flood of superfakes. When trust evaporates, so does the premium. The next fallout is this: what happens when the entire luxury market loses faith in its own price tags? Industry losses now top $30 billion a year. That number once sounded abstract, but now it shows up in shuttered boutiques and empty display windows. Hundreds of authorized Rolex retailers have closed their doors since 2023, from Shanghai's luxury corridors to flagship addresses in Paris and New York. Store managers blame shrinking margins and a wave of returns, as wary buyers second-guess every purchase, and resale platforms freeze payouts on flagged inventory. The economic damage is not theoretical. Watch repair shops are laying off technicians and sales staff are being let go. Even the real estate market in luxury districts feels the chill, with vacant storefronts multiplying as foot traffic dries up. The numbers are staggering, but the human cost lands in daily phone calls, owners demanding refunds, and collectors chasing vanished guarantees. The question now: can any brand survive when trust itself is up for sale? Rolex did not wait for the market to heal on its own. In 2023, the company deployed a $500 million war chest to launch its certified pre-owned program, a global operation designed to buy back trust. Every watch in the program undergoes factory-level authentication, full refurbishment, and comes with a Rolex-backed warranty. Certified pre-owned watches now command a 28% premium over comparable non-certified pieces, according to market data. That premium is not just for steel and gears, it is the price of certainty, in a world where even experts can be fooled. For buyers, the new rules are clear. Stick to certified sources, demand full provenance, scrutinize digital records, and accept that trust now carries a surcharge. Rolex has turned authentication into a product, and trust itself into a commodity. But as the price of certainty climbs, one question lingers. What happens when the cost of trust outpaces the value of the watch itself? Today, over 40 million counterfeit watches leave Chinese factories each year, more than double Swiss production. Resale prices for genuine Rolexes have dropped by 28% since 2022, and authentication failures are surging across every platform. The line between value and illusion is vanishing. When trust collapses at the top of the luxury market, what stops the rest of the economy from following? Drop your thoughts below. How do you spot what's real?